When we talk about the great questions of our time, one stands tall. What happens if India refuses to bow to U.S. tariffs? Now let's be clear. Tariffs are not just numbers on a chart or complicated terms in a trade deal. They are about people. They're about farmers in Punjab, small business owners in Delhi, tech innovators in Bangalore, and yes, American workers in Detroit and Ohio too. Behind every tariff, there's a story of hope, of struggle, of ambition. If India stands firm, it will be making a statement that sovereignty cannot be dictated by external pressure, that the future of over 1 billion people cannot be defined in Washington alone, that a nation with ancient wisdom and modern drive has the right to shape its own destiny. But we also know this: when a giant like India takes a stand, the ripples are felt across the world. Markets react, allies reconsider their strategies, competitors look for opportunities, and suddenly a trade dispute isn't just about tariffs. It's about the architecture of global power in the 21st century. Now, will there be challenges? Of course. Refusing to bow will not come without cost. There may be disruptions, shortages, or economic setbacks, but in those very challenges lie opportunities. Opportunities to innovate, to strengthen local industries, to forge new alliances, and to inspire young people who believe that dignity and resilience are worth the sacrifice. And let me tell you something: leadership is tested not when the path is easy, but when the path is uncertain. True leadership means asking, do we yield to pressure or do we rise with dignity? Do we allow the winds of global power to steer us? Or do we chart our own course with confidence, patience, and courage? My friends, when we talk about the great questions of our time, one stands tall and it challenges not only policymakers but the very spirit of a nation. What happens if India refuses to bow to U.S. tariffs? This is not just a question of economics. It is a question of identity, of sovereignty, of resilience. Tariffs are not simply numbers in a trade ledger. They are not lines buried in the language of international agreements. Tariffs touch lives. They touch the hands of farmers who rise with the sun in Punjab. They touch the shopkeepers on the crowded streets of Delhi. They touch the innovators in Bangalore who dream of transforming technology for the world. And yes, they even touch American workers in Detroit and Ohio who know what it means to compete, to struggle, and to build a future out of hard work. If India decides to stand firm, if it refuses to bend under pressure, it is not just resisting a policy. It is declaring that its destiny will not be written in another capital. It is declaring that its billion voices cannot be silenced by the weight of tariffs or the shadow of external influence. It is declaring that the path forward is one of dignity, determination, and unyielding hope. And when a nation the size of India takes a stand, the world pays attention. Markets will react, governments will rethink strategies, alliances may shift, and competitors will search for new opportunities. What begins as an economic standoff can quickly transform into a rebalancing of global power. It will show that in the 21st century, the architecture of commerce cannot be shaped by one nation alone, no matter how powerful, but must reflect the aspirations of many. That message carries strength, and that strength has the power to inspire. But let's not underestimate the challenges that come with such a decision. There will be hardships. There may be disruptions in trade, short-term losses, perhaps even uncertainty in markets. Yet in those moments of hardship lie seeds of possibility, because it is in the face of struggle that innovation is born. It is when the usual routes are blocked that nations discover new paths. Standing tall in the storm does not weaken you. It forces you to grow stronger, to dig deeper, to summon reserves of creativity and resilience that you never knew existed. This is where the opportunity emerges. India can turn adversity into strength, building new industries, strengthening its own supply chains, nurturing entrepreneurs who can compete not only within its borders but across the globe. It can create alliances with nations that also seek independence from the traditional centers of economic gravity, forming networks that are fairer, more balanced, and more inclusive. By refusing to bow, India can remind the world that dignity and decision-making is not negotiable. And this test, this defining moment, is not just about policies or numbers. It is about leadership. Leadership is not proven when the path is easy or the waters calm. Leadership is revealed in the storm when uncertainty clouds the horizon and choices come with great cost. Leadership is asking the hard questions. Do we yield to pressure or do we rise with dignity? Do we bend or do we stand tall? Do we allow others to define our future, or do we write that story ourselves with courage, confidence, and faith? India has always been a land of resilience. From its struggle for independence to its rise as a global power, it has shown that progress is not given, it is earned. It has shown that strength comes not from avoiding challenges, but by embracing them and turning them into stepping stones toward greatness. This moment, this question of tariffs, is yet another chapter in that long history. And it is not a chapter to be feared, but one to be embraced with the conviction that no matter how great the pressure, the spirit of a people cannot be broken. So when the world asks what happens if India refuses to bow, The answer will not be found only in numbers or negotiations. The answer will be found in the resolve of its people, in the dreams of its youth, in the courage of its leaders, and in the unshakable belief that a nation's destiny is best secured not by submission, but by standing firm, standing proud, and standing free. If India stands firm in the face of U.S. tariffs, it is not simply about economics, it is about character. It is about a nation's refusal to let its destiny be dictated by forces beyond its shores. It is about sending a message to the world that strength does not come from bowing down to pressure, but from rising with dignity and conviction. Tariffs may look like policies on paper, but they are lived in the daily struggles of millions. They are felt by the farmer who tills the soil under the blazing sun, by the small business owner who dreams of expanding beyond borders, by the young student in Bangalore building technology to change lives, and by the families who aspire to rise above challenges. When India says no, it is not rejecting dialogue. It is affirming its sovereignty, its ability to stand on its own feet, and its belief that resilience matters more than submission. Now imagine the ripples of such a decision. The global economy does not operate in silence. It echoes with every bold choice made by rising nations. Markets react, alliances are reconsidered, and the balance of power shifts in unexpected ways. If India chooses not to yield, it becomes a catalyst for change. It shows the world that no single country, no matter how influential, can unilaterally decide the course of global trade. It demonstrates that in the modern age, strength is not measured by the size of one's economy alone, but by the will of a nation to protect its dignity and values. This is not defiance for the sake of defiance. It is principle. It is the understanding that sovereignty is not a commodity to be traded, but a foundation to be defended. Challenges, of course, will come. Pressure may intensify, markets may shift, and hardships may rise. But let us not forget that it is in moments of trial that greatness is born. A smooth road never builds strong travelers, and a nation's character is not defined in comfort but in struggle. When barriers rise, so too does innovation. When old doors close, new doors are forced open. By refusing to bend, India may endure short-term strain, but in that strain lies the opportunity to spark industries of the future, to nurture entrepreneurs who will not be reliant on a single market, to discover partnerships with nations eager for fairness, and to inspire generations to believe that challenges are not walls, but stepping stones. This is how adversity transforms into opportunity. It is how a nation strengthens not just its economy, but its spirit. For every industry that adapts, for every farmer that finds new markets, for every innovator who turns crisis into creation, India builds a new story, not one of dependence, but one of resilience. This is the test that separates nations that yield from nations that lead. It is the test that asks not just what can be endured, but what can be achieved when the pressure is greatest. And leadership, true leadership, emerges in these very moments. It is not about choosing the easy path. It is about choosing the right one. It is about asking the hard questions and having the courage to face the hard answers. Do we fold under pressure, or do we rise with dignity? Do we allow others to write our story? Or do we seize the pen and write it ourselves? Do we accept the weight of tariffs as a burden? Or do we transform it into fuel for a stronger tomorrow? That is the essence of leadership. That is the measure of a nation's resolve. India has shown time and again that it possesses that resolve. It has faced colonization and won freedom. It has faced poverty and built growth. It has faced division and chosen unity. Each trial has forged resilience. And each victory has proven that India is not defined by the challenges it faces, but by the way it overcomes them. Today's question of tariffs is simply another test, another moment to rise, another opportunity to prove that destiny belongs to those who refuse to bow, those who stand tall, and those who believe that the strength of 1 billion people is greater than any external pressure. So when the world looks to India and wonders what happens if it does not bow, the answer will be found not in numbers alone, but in the spirit of its people and the courage of its choices, and in the unwavering belief that dignity and determination are worth every sacrifice. When we ask what happens if India refuses to bow to U.S. tariffs, we are really asking what happens when a nation chooses dignity over submission, resilience over dependence, and courage over fear. Tariffs may look like technical trade measures, but they are symbols of power, leverage, and pressure. They are tools designed to bend wheels, to force decisions, and to remind smaller players of their place in the hierarchy of global commerce. But India is not a small player. India is a rising giant with over 1 billion voices, a rich heritage of struggle and victory, and a determination that cannot be measured in charts or balance sheets. When India stands tall and says no, it sends a message that cannot be ignored. It says the story of the future will not be written by others but by its own people. This refusal would not be an act of defiance for its own sake. It would be a statement of sovereignty. It would remind the world that the destiny of a nation cannot be dictated by the will of another, that the strength of 1 billion hands building, creating and striving every day is greater than any external threat. And it would also remind young Indians, those who are watching closely, that their future is not about bowing to pressure, but about believing in their own capacity to rise. Yes, there will be consequences. Let us not pretend otherwise. A stand like this would create tension. There may be trade disruptions. There may be economic pain. There may be uncertain days ahead, but struggle has always been the birthplace of strength. Hardship forces us to grow. Obstacles fuel innovation. Resistance creates resilience. For every barrier placed in front of India, there lies an opportunity to build something new, to expand industries, to diversify partnerships, to strengthen domestic production, and to ignite the spirit of self-reliance. What happens if India refuses to bow is not simply about economics. It is about transformation. It is about turning crisis into creation, about converting external pressure into internal progress. Imagine the farmer who finds new markets because the old ones are closed. Imagine the entrepreneur who invents new solutions because traditional paths are blocked. Imagine the youth who realize that their country's strength comes not from dependency but from ingenuity. This is the story of progress born from struggle, and it is a story worth telling. And then there is the question of global perception. If India stands tall, the world notices. Nations begin to rethink their alliances, reconsider their strategies, and adjust their calculations. Markets may tremble at first, but they adapt. Competitors may try to take advantage, but they also learn respect. Refusing to bow would not isolate India. It would redefine its position. It would make clear that in this century, power is not simply about imposing, but about standing firm in the face of it. That message carries weight, and that weight inspires others who also seek independence and fairness. Leadership is revealed in these moments not when times are easy, but when the path is uncertain. Leadership is not about yielding to pressure, but about choosing the harder road when it leads to greater dignity. It is about asking, do we surrender our choices for the sake of convenience, or do we embrace the challenge and prove our strength? Do we allow others to dictate our direction, or do we chart our own course with confidence and courage? The answers to these questions do not just shape policies, they shape generations. India's history is full of moments when it chose the harder road, when it resisted domination and fought for independence, when it embraced democracy against the odds, when it turned scarcity into growth. Time and again, the nation has proven that its strength lies not in avoiding struggle, but in facing it head-on, in refusing to give in standing firm until progress is achieved. This is one more moment, one more test, one more chance to rise above pressure and prove that India's destiny belongs only to its people. So what happens if India refuses to bow? What happens is that the world sees a nation unafraid to stand tall, unafraid to endure short-term pain for long-term gain, unafraid to defend its dignity and independence. What happens is that 1 billion people are reminded that their dreams cannot be contained, their spirit cannot be broken, and their future cannot be dictated by external pressure. What happens is that resilience becomes the story and courage becomes the lesson, not just for India, but for the world watching closely. When we consider what happens if India refuses to bow to U.S. tariffs, we must understand that this is more than a question of trade. It is a question of willpower, of pride, of whether a nation of over 1 billion people accepts its future as something imposed upon it or claims it as something it creates for itself. Tariffs are not just numbers written on paper. They represent pressure and attempt to bend choices, to dictate terms, to remind nations that the balance of power is often tilted. But when India stands tall and says no, it is not simply rejecting a policy. It is affirming that sovereignty is sacred, that dignity is non-negotiable, and that resilience is stronger than any external demand. That choice sends a signal across the world. It tells every farmer sowing seeds, every small business owner opening their shop, every young innovator designing technology that their work is not defined by forces beyond their borders, but by their own hands and their own determination. It tells them that the future of India will not be bought or sold in the corridors of Washington, but built in the villages, the cities, and the classrooms of India itself. It is a reminder that power is not always about bending others. It is also about refusing to be bent. The impact of such a decision will not be contained within borders. The global economy reacts when giants make bold moves. Markets shift, allies reassess their options, competitors scramble to adjust. What starts as a tariff dispute quickly becomes a moment that redefines relationships, reshapes alliances, and rebalances influence. If India refuses to bow, it demonstrates that global commerce is no longer a one-sided equation, but a conversation that demands fairness, dignity, and equality. It is a bold step toward a future where no single power dictates, but many nations collaborate with respect. Of course, with courage comes challenge. The path of resistance is not smooth, and the choice to stand firm will come with cost. There may be disruptions, shortages, and periods of uncertainty. But every trial is also a teacher. Struggle sharpens resolve. Obstacles fuel creativity. Pressure pushes people to find new solutions. By facing this storm, India creates opportunities to grow stronger, to expand its industries, to diversify its markets, and to discover the depths of its own resilience. Hardship does not weaken a nation, it forges it. And within that hardship lies opportunity. Imagine the industries that rise when dependence is broken. Imagine the entrepreneurs who build new systems because the old ones no longer serve. Imagine the youth who see this moment not as defeat, but as the spark to invent, to innovate, to dream bigger. Refusing to bow is not only about rejecting pressure. It is about creating possibilities. It is about using adversity as a foundation for self-reliance and turning challenges into stepping stones toward a brighter future. The world will watch closely and the message will echo beyond trade. It will show that leadership is not about seeking comfort, but about embracing sacrifice when dignity is at stake. It will show that power is not measured only in wealth but in will. And it will show that when a nation believes in itself, it becomes unshakable no matter the obstacles placed before it. Leadership is tested in these very moments. When the road is uncertain, when the pressure is immense, when the cost is real, that is when leaders must ask, do we bend or do we stand? Do we yield for convenience or do we rise for principle? Do we let others decide our course or do we chart our own with courage? These questions define nations, they define futures. They separate those who simply endure from those who truly lead. India's story has always been one of rising through challenge. From centuries of struggle for freedom to decades of building a modern nation from the ground up to becoming one of the fastest growing economies in the world. The lesson has been clear. India does not break under pressure. It grows stronger. Each test has been an opportunity. Each hardship a stepping stone. Each moment of doubt a chance to prove faith in its people. The question of tariffs is simply another chapter in this long history, another chance to rise, another moment to demonstrate that India is not defined by the weight placed upon it, but by how it lifts itself higher. So when India refuses to bow, it is not just taking a stand against tariffs. It is standing for sovereignty, for dignity, for the belief that a nation's destiny is written not by pressure from abroad, but by the strength within. It is proving that courage is stronger than fear, that resilience is greater than hardship, and that the dreams of 1 billion people cannot be contained by external demands. It is a moment not of weakness, but of power, not of defeat, but of pride, and not of retreat, but of rising. So we bring all of this together. We must remember that the story of tariffs is not only about trade, numbers, or policies written in fine print. It is about people. It is about the farmer in Punjab whose work feeds millions, the shopkeeper in Delhi who relies on stability to keep his doors open, the young student in Bangalore who dreams of writing the next chapter in technology, and the millions of families across India who rise each morning with hope in their hearts and determination in their hands. When we ask what happens if India refuses to bow to U.S. tariffs, the answer is not found in ledgers or stock markets alone. The answer is found in the spirit of its people, the history of its struggles, and the unshakable belief that sovereignty is not something given. It is something earned and defended. If India refuses to yield, it is declaring that it will not be defined by external pressure. It is saying that the dignity of its billion citizens is not a bargaining chip. It is affirming that its future will not be decided in the corridors of Washington or Beijing or Brussels, but on the soil of India itself. That kind of statement is not just an act of policy. It is an act of courage, a declaration of independence in a world that often rewards submission. And make no mistake, the world will be watching. Because when a nation of this scale chooses dignity over compliance, it forces others to reimagine the balance of power. It shows that strength is not just about wealth, but about will. It reveals that the true test of a nation is not whether it avoids pressure, but whether it stands tall in its midst. Now there will be consequences, challenges will rise, markets may stumble, partnerships may strain, and there will be moments of uncertainty. But history teaches us that struggle is the birthplace of progress. Hardship is the soil in which resilience grows. Obstacles are the sparks that light innovation. Every test India has faced has only forged its character stronger. From colonial oppression to economic transformation, from poverty to progress, India has always chosen the harder road and emerged with a deeper strength. And so it will be here. What some see as loss will become opportunity. What some fear as disruption will be transformed into discovery. What some call weakness will reveal itself as resilience. Because in refusing to bow, India does not close doors, it opens new ones. It will build new industries, develop new partnerships, and strengthen its capacity for self-reliance. It will teach its young people that courage is not avoiding the fight, but facing it. It will show entrepreneurs that barriers are not endings, but beginnings. It will remind the world that sovereignty is not for sale and dignity is not negotiable. And in doing so, India will not only strengthen its own future, it will inspire other nations who long to chart their own course free from domination. Leadership is defined in these moments. True leadership is not found in comfort or ease. It is found in uncertainty, in sacrifice, and standing firm when the easier choice is to yield. Leadership is asking the hard questions. Do we bend for convenience or do we rise for principle? Do we let others dictate our course or do we claim our right to steer it ourselves? Do we compromise dignity for short-term relief or do we embrace hardship for the sake of long-term strength? The answers to these questions do not simply shape policies, they shape history. They define how a generation remembers itself, how a people see their own worth, and how the world comes to respect them. India has always shown that it is a land of resilience. It has always been willing to endure difficulty to protect its principles. It has always proven that dignity and determination are worth the sacrifice. This moment, this test, is one more opportunity to carry that legacy forward, to prove that courage outweighs fear, that resilience defeats pressure, and that sovereignty once claimed cannot be surrendered. So when the world asks what happens if India refuses to bow, the answer will not be a story of collapse or retreat. It will be a story of standing tall, of refusing to compromise on dignity, of turning adversity into opportunity, and of proving once again that the spirit of a nation cannot be broken by external demands. It will be a story that reminds the global community that fairness must replace dominance, that respect must replace coercion, and that the future must be shaped by partnership rather than pressure. And more than that, it will be a story told in the lives of everyday people. In the farmer who finds new markets, in the entrepreneur who creates new industries, in the student who believes their future is not about bowing down but about rising up. It will be a story written in the courage of its leaders, the determination of its citizens, and the hope of its youth. A story that says to the world, India's destiny belongs to India. Its choices are its own. Its future is unshakable because it is built not on submission but on strength, not on fear but on courage, not on compromise but on conviction. That is what happens if India refuses to bow. The world witnesses not weakness but power, not silence but a voice that echoes across borders, not retreat but the rise of a nation determined to define its own future. And in that choice, in that stand, in that refusal to bend lies the promise of progress, the pride of sovereignty, and the enduring truth that dignity will always be worth more than compromise. Yes.